My name is John Wenyap. I'm the Outreach and Advocacy Manager here at California Humanities. Welcome to the opening reception of We Are More, Stories by Queer Comic Artists. We Are More is the newest exhibit of our series, Art of Storytelling, that we host here at our California Humanities Oakland office. The Art of Storytelling celebrates California's rich cultural and artistic histories and dynamic changing demographics through multi-generational storytelling and testimonials articulated through a variety of media, like we see today. This is our 6th exhibit since 2017, and if you have a program, one of the beautiful programs, it has information on the past exhibits that we've had here. You could also go on our webpage and see the past panels of those exhibits. The Art of Storytelling exemplifies California Humanities as an organization. We were founded over 44 years ago as the independent nonprofit partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities for the state of California, and we provide grants and programs to amplify the stories of the people of California, to dig deeper and engage in the conversations and explore both what connects us and makes us unique so that together we can continue to strengthen our state and our communities. So today we are thrilled and honored to have 5 amazing creators who exemplify and inspire the title, We Are More. After numerous conversations and email exchanges with the artists, I did spam them a lot, and after seeing the art that they wanted to exhibit, it stood out to us that the stories reflect aspects of queer identity that are often unseen or hidden in mainstream narratives. Each of the pieces provides a lens into complex stories which deny categorization. So I'm going to introduce the artists really briefly. Tonight we have here Ajuan Mance, who is a professor of African American literature at Mills College. Breena Nuñez is a cartoonist living in Oakland by way of San Bruno, California. Right here. Lindell is a cartoonist and educator from California. Back here. Trinidad Escobar is a queer cartoonist, poet, and mother in Oakland, California. And we have Vivian Kleiman, who is known for tackling challenging subjects and filming approaches. She's a filmmaker behind the Forthcoming No Straight Lines and is the executive producer of the Academy Award-nominated documentary short, Last Day of Freedom. She has 7 co-productions with independent television service for national PBS broadcast. As an educator, she served as an adjunct faculty at Stanford University's graduate program in documentary film and video production. And Vivian is actually the first person I talked to about this exhibit. I started here in February. Our team here had lots of ideas for our next Art of Storytelling exhibit, and showing part of the film, or at least discussing the film, was one of the things that popped up most and it really captured my attention. Partially just because I like comic books, but also because I thought it'd be amazing to see comic book art, especially Bay Area comic book art, especially queer stories here in our office. And so Vivian's film, No Straight Lines, really connected with us for this exhibit. I talked to Vivian first about the potential for an exhibit, and we had a wonderful conversation about the progress of her film and the path it took her throughout the comic book and graphic novel world. The film is currently still in production, although the rough cut possibly got finished yesterday, and she's going to be showing us about 8 minutes of it, and also talking to us a little bit about the film and some other pieces about herself and the art.
In the spring of 2015, I attended the world's first Queers and Comics conference held in New York City. From the chartreuse-colored hair of a 20-year-old punker, to a GQ magazine-looking guy, to the MacArthur Genius Award recipient Alison Bechtel, all on panels together, all hanging out and talking together. It was a casting director's dream. Young and old, gender non-conforming, trans, bi, and so a film project was born. Today, the conference co-organizer, cartoonist and educator Justin Hall, is producing the film with me. He should be coming momentarily, if Bart will accommodate. As I said, late last night, editor Keith Wilson and I completed the rough cut of the film, and soon you'll be the very first audience to have a sneak peek at the opening sequence. John asked if I would address the difference between creating a book and producing a documentary film. As a filmmaker, my goal is to take viewers on an emotional journey, to tell a compelling story that also shimmers with a level of metaphor whenever possible. So what does that mean for queer comics? Well, the book is a compendium of some, meaning Justin's book, No Straight Lines, a history of 4 decades of queer comics. So the book is a compendium of some 80 artists, and it required tireless labor of research. The film is more intimate, of a profile of 5 artists, the challenges they faced, and the obstacles that they overcame. An easier film, and by the way, much cheaper to my funder, John, would be a series of self-contained profiles of 5 artists. But these artists are people whose work has evolved over time. So we're taking on the challenge and hopefully garnering the rewards to interweave their stories and construct an emotional narrative that embraces their triumphs and their frustrations. At the same time, the artwork itself is static and two-dimensional, as we see up here on the wall. So with the permission of the artists, we will use motion graphics to animate much of the work. A well-made documentary has potential to reach a very large audience, and a documentary film with high production value usually will have possibility anyway of a much longer shelf life and reach young people in classes in community colleges, streaming in the privacy of their university dorm rooms, at queer community centers and museums, and who knows, possibly broadcasts. I hope that for queer youth, this film will not only capture the optimism and passion of the times, but will also give voice to the dark feelings not so easily expressed. John also asked about how the concept for the film has changed since we started working on it. At its core, I'd say that it's pretty much the same. 5 people. But the creative process has fostered new approaches that have had an enormous impact on the significance of the storytelling and its style. First, the selection of the 5 artists changed as we realized that one of them mumbled. Not so good for filmmaking. It was difficult to understand. He also had a rather dour personality that pushed the viewer away rather than drawing them into the story. Then, after filming 3 of the 5 artists, I felt that the film was missing the dynamic edge of the contemporary queer comic scene, like we're seeing today in this room. After all, the film's climax is in 2006, when Alison Bechdel's Fun Home garnered mainstream acceptance, and she received the so-called MacArthur Genius Award. To address that problem, I did an experiment. I conducted a dozen mini speed interviews with diverse, edgy, queer comics creators who came to San Francisco from many countries to attend the second conference of queer cartoonists who inspired them. At the end of the day of filming, our award-winning cinematographer, Andy Black, faced me and said, "Viv, this has been one of the most interesting days of filming I've ever had." And boy, has he done a lot of great filming. But I have no idea how you're going to work these stories into the film. And in truth, neither did I. But I had a hunch. And I might add that one of the artists here today kindly put herself in front of the camera that day and allowed me to do a mini speed interview. So you can talk with Ajuan about that experience, to have speed interviewing with a stranger. Back in the edit room, I tested out the notion of using these comments as a sort of punctuation mark to interrupt the narrative, the cadence, at various points in the film. And to if you're telling a chronology, after a while it can get a little tedious. First this happened, then that happened, then the other happened. So I wanted to punctuate that, somewhat inspired by work I had done with Marlon Riggs called color adjustment, where every so often we posed questions on the screen to the viewer, and it was very effective. So I showed samples to various people, and to everyone's delight and some surprise, it seemed to work. The film now is infused with the vitality that was missing, had we just stuck with the original plan. Finally, John also asked if I had any favorite moments from shooting that really stood out for me. He asked good questions. Well, Alison Bechtel had been interviewed and filmed countless times. She had also given innumerable lectures and keynote speeches. So she told the story of her career over and over to the point that one would assume no new stories, and certainly no fresh storytelling, which for filmmaking is very important. But at one point, I asked a follow-up question that caught her off guard. There was a link between two prior stories that she had told. And at that moment, I could see that Alison was getting very emotional. Instead of pursuing the question further, I allowed for some silence, for the heaviness in the air to lift. It was exactly the moment of intimacy with the artist that I had aspired to achieve, but didn't think would be possible. At the same time, I had no need for this project to exert any further emotional stress on her. The film didn't need that. We're not doing a 60 minutes expose of some horrible crime. I hope that the power of the stories in our film, of the artists overcoming their own demons through artistic expression, connection, and perseverance, will be impactful on young audiences in particular. I want to thank the California Humanities, to the Johns, the staff, board of directors, Julie, who worked tirelessly to bring these creative projects to fruition. And now I'll stop yakking and we can watch some of the footage.
As Vivian shared, the artists that are featured in the film have some sort of connection with Bay Area or California. To round out our exploration into queer comic artists and stories from Oakland, we connected with our featured artists who are so wonderfully enthusiastic about participating. That's very true. And they're all super busy, and I really appreciate the time that they've given us to pick art out for us, to work on art, to share it with us, and again, answer my numerous emails. There's many. They provide numerous intersections of experiences, identities, and art styles. We would love to hear more about each of you. Your art pieces you can talk about when you're at the pieces, but we'd love to know more about you, yourselves as artists, why you chose comic book art, and a connection to our theme of We Are More. So anyone can choose to go first.
Anyone?
You should do it.
All right.
You can also repeat your name in case people came in late.
I'm Trinidad Escobar. I've been making comics for a very long time, but only doing it in a way that's sustainable and feels good for the last 4 years. I went to CCA to get my MFA in comics. Best decision ever in my education career. And then I've been teaching comics also for about 6 years. So I chose comics. No, you know, when you're a kid, like comics choose you. You have like no choice. My mom took me to Goodwill, where Asian people get their books. And I found Far Side Gallery by Gary Larson, and I just fell in love with it. I would read it at home on the couch, eating candy after school. And I grew up like in East Side San Jose, where people are really tough and rough, and I would come home and hide my comics. If people came to my house, I'd hide all my comics. So that feeling of like having this other identity, being kind of nerdy and geeky, felt good to just have for myself. And later when I found my own people, that love kind of grew, and it has sustained itself, and I still do it today.
Guess we can go down the line. I'm Ajuan Mance, and I think I didn't choose comics. Comics chose me. I am mostly, I do a lot of art. I love painting. I've been doing illustration. I did a project starting in 2010 called 1001 Black Men, and I drew 1001 portraits of black men, mostly from the Bay Area. And that project brought me in contact with the zine world. I started doing zines of some of the images, and that's where I met comic artists, queer comic creators. I met Justin. I met Ed Luce and John Macy, and in particular at places like Comic-Con and Alternative Press Expo, and they said, oh, you should do comics. And I remember always thinking, it's too much work. I would read, I was in college in the 80s, so I was reading Alison Bechdel's work like it was a religion, and I thought, this is so cool, but whoa, that's way too much work. And it is a lot of work, but I love the medium. I never keep a journal. I'm bored writing about myself. I usually keep a journal for about a half a day. I'm like, okay, enough. But I've actually wanted to I found my medium for talking about things that matter to me. And so I just can't wait to see what comics have to offer in the future. I've been at it for about 5 years. Yeah.
I think I was born into comics. Oh, and my name is Breena Nuñez. Yeah, I say that because my family on my mother's side, they're from Guatemala, and whenever I tell stories about like going to school for comics, I'm also a student at CCA in the MFA program for comics. My grandma would always be like, oh, I remember reading Pato Donald, like at like our little storefront. They used to have like a store in like my family's hometown, and she read Donald Duck, and that love of comics just also was passed on to my mom's generation. So they read Archie. That comic actually helped my mom learn how to speak English when she came to the mission. And I'm trying to remember other stuff that they used to read. Mafalda, who I like to say is like the radical version of Charlie Brown. Yeah, like she was like a badass feminist. And when it came to my brother and me, I don't know, we were just like unapologetically geeky and nerdy. We didn't really care. And if it wasn't for my older brother, I would have like found an affinity for Sonic the Hedgehog. And my spirit animal, I think, for most of my youth was Garfield the cat. I know he's like such a goofy character. I think people in the comics world like to, I don't know, like shit on him. But he taught me to be unapologetically like, I don't know, just happy about my body, because body issues are like a thing too, like being a youth. And he was like probably the only non-white character that I could also like resonate with. So comic strips was like a really big thing in my family, and I feel like that still happens today. And I feel like I haven't taken comics seriously until I fell in love with them again in college. I just loved Love and Rockets, and it was my first time seeing queer, punk, brown, like Latinas doing their thing, and seeing my community reflected in Jaime Hernandez's work. And that just made me feel like, oh damn, like I can do it too if he's doing it. That's so cool. And yeah, I've always like to think that the reason why I also make comics too is because I'm always having a conversation with my younger self, because she always wanted to see her people and her experiences reflected in comic books, because we don't get to see a lot of Central Americans just being themselves, just being, awkward or shy or like timid, and all of the other nuances that come with our experience. So yeah, this is why I'm doing the thing.
Lawrence Lindell, also CCA student for the MFA program. I graduate, I speak very low, that's just my tone, so I try to speak loud, but I'm kind of sick. But I graduate next year, and then Breena graduates this year, so it's kind of cool, like having a lot of CCA in the house. I started making comics because of my parents' divorce, and it kind of helped me like process what was happening. And then now I use my comics as a form of like therapy to talk about mental health, blackness, and queerness. And I got my start in the zine scene, so that's kind of where I come from, like the zine community.
Thank you.
Is is there anything else any of you want to share in particular about the theme or anything like in terms of what creating comics is means for you like right now versus growing up?
I guess I'll just mention that comics is as an accessible medium, and I know Jules Smith, who does the Afrocentric comic, it's also open-based, talks a lot about being inspired by teaching at Laney and realizing, if people will read a comic about the prison industrial complex before they'll read an entire book about it. Let me make more comics about issues. And I will say I've stepped more away from painting into illustration comics. With all these comic creators, I feel like there are people who read these stories who might not have access to this type of storytelling and representation if it wasn't in this highly accessible format.
Mm-hmm. And webcomics too. So many of my students say that they learn about issues going on in the world, current events, through webcomics on Instagram. It's just instant information that pulls people in because of the colors and the way that things are illustrated, versus reading like an academic paper or something, right? Like gentrification. It kind of shows younger people why you should care and how people are caring, rather than here's information somewhere within yourself you should care, somewhere within yourself you should do something. It's much more direct and prompts action, I think, in a way that other mediums don't.
I like to think comics is like a museum that you're always carrying inside your backpack or your tote. Like, I'm trying to remember like when I first started going to museums, and I think it wasn't until maybe like a field trip back in high school. And then, being here in the Bay Area, it's like kind of a heartbreaking thing to see that those types of experiences, like going to a museum, is also still very inaccessible because they're pretty expensive. And I always felt like comics were always undermined for being seen as just like funny books, or this is just like, not even like fine art or like literature. This is like not real. Like these would not be in the MoMA at all, right? But it is art, it is literature, and I feel like you're making like this beautiful object, I don't know, that has like so much vulnerability. And I always think about the authors and like all y'all like put so much of like your love and your, I don't know, like just like your spirit inside this book, and it's like traveling. It has like the ability to move and like be passed from like a friend, or like find it in like, Goodwill or something. Like it has like so much freedom to like go anywhere, and besides like accessing art and like an institution. Yeah.
So let's share some love for everybody for them. Who's an artist. I want to thank our California Humanities team that's put together this exhibit and reception. This has been a team effort. I've been referenced a lot, or maybe it was John. It gets confusing. We both have the same name. I'm just kidding. I did want to share an added acknowledgement to my teammate, Claudia Lung, our communication manager, who's put a lot of work into this. She was a key leader in our curation, the creation of and realization of this exhibit, for making connections with the artists, to developing all the beautiful promotional materials that you see either in your hands and in the posters, online, and all around the East Bay, seeing them on stores. So thank you. Of course, I want to thank all of you for coming. We're thrilled to have so many people here. We're thrilled to have a packed room. We're thrilled that our air conditioning is working so that you're all comfortable in here. The exhibit will run through September. We have open hours on every second Friday of each month, which aligns with the farmers market here in Old Oakland, so 11 and 2. But you're also free to contact me directly if you want to bring some other people to come by and it doesn't fit that open hours time. Also, if you're interested in bringing a group of youth or a group of peers or a group of young adults or whoever that might vibe but want to learn more and vibe with the art that's here, please let me know. We can figure out a time if it works to have your meeting here so that they can spend more time with the art too. Again, please let me know. So thanks again. Please continue mingling and check out the art, talk to the artists, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you.